Hey guys, what is up? Phonic Pain here, aka Victor, and I am coming to you with a sweet gameplay, but this video is not really about the gameplay. It's more about a tutorial on how I suggest you guys set up your classes to get Moabs, and yeah. So to start it off, I would suggest using either an assault rifle or a submachine gun, depending on your playing style. If you're more rushing, I would suggest using a submachine gun, obviously, but if you're more of a objective player, protecting objectives and going long range on their asses, I would suggest going long range. I would suggest using an assault rifle, and this is how I would set up my classes for those. So first of all, with the submachine gun, I would suggest going rapid fire and suppressor as your attachments. Sorry, and for your perks, I would suggest going scavenger, hardline, and steady aim, or scavenger, hardline, or scavenger, assassin, and steady aim. Depending on who is in your lobby and what you think they're going to be using, that will depend on your perks. So basically read the lobby, see if you think they're going to be using port radars, or if you know they're going to be using port radars, I would suggest using assassin. And if you know they're kind of newbie and you think you're going to get a lot of kills without assassin, put on hardline. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. But as a specialist setup, use sleight of hand and dead silence and sit rep if you're using hardline, because obviously you're not going to need assassin if you're not putting it on first perk. But if you're using assassin, I would suggest going sleight of hand, stalker, and hardline, because that works out really well. And normally you're going to get 1 to 2 assists per life, so just keep that in mind when you're setting up your perks for your specialist. So if you're more long range and if you want to take objectives and help your team out and be a team player while still getting Moabs, I would suggest using an assault rifle, and I would suggest either the ACR or the M4 or the FAD, and those ones work out pretty well. And for those perk setups, I would do scavenger, assassin, and stalker for your primaries, and then sleight of hand, marksman or steady aim, and hardline as your specialist setup. And if you're using that, that was more for moving around one side of the map, staying to the outskirts of the map, and keeping the enemies inside, like in the middle of the map, and picking them off one by one, not really spraying them down. And for the attachments, I would suggest using silencer and extended magazines for assault rifles, and that works for if you want to take them out long range, but you don't want to get in huge gunfights. That's really good. But if you do want to get in gunfights, I would suggest putting steady aim on instead of stalker, and that will help you out greatly when you're in a gunfight. For the submachine guns, if I didn't tell you this already, but I would suggest using any submachine gun but the MP5 and the PM9, unless you're going PM9 on Dome, which works out really well because it has the fastest fire rate ever in Call of Duty history if you put rapid fire on it, with 1,675 bullets coming out per minute, and it takes just over a second to unload a whole clip if you're shooting constantly. So that would be really suggested on short range maps, and either use range or stability for the PM9. Now I'm just going to go over what guns and really what they're good for. Like the PP90 M1, that's what I'll start off with. It's probably the most common gun in this game. I've probably been killed by it the most, but it's for more rushing around and keeping in the middle of the map instead of you keeping them on the outside of the map. And also the MP7 is good for that too, but the PP90 also has a bigger range drop off, like bigger damage range drop off than the MP7, which the MP7 has the best in its class for range. So I would suggest, if you're gonna be going with the PP90, but you don't want to, if you don't have 2 attachments or you don't want 2 attachments on, I would suggest going range and suppressor for that. If you're going to be using 2 attachments, use rapid fire and suppressor, or suppressor and extended mags for your perks. And if you're running with those two, rapid fire and suppressor, I would suggest that you have sleight of hand. Well, always would suggest if you have sleight of hand on there, always have sleight of hand as your primary specialist perk, and have also have hardline on, because hardline works out really well for rapid fire and suppressor weapons. And yeah, so MP7, I would suggest using silencer and rapid fire. But if you're gonna be using silencer and extended mags, I would suggest trying to get close range, but don't go too long range. Also, like if you're going in close range, that's good, but don't try to go too long range, because submachine guns, as you know, aren't the greatest at long range. So now those are like the two most suggested ones that I would suggest for suggesting blah 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 for Moabs. Those are mainly rushing Moabs or controlling one area of the map, and they're good for spraying down people and getting double kills in gunfights. Assault rifles, I would suggest using either the SCAR, ACR, M4, and the FAD. If you're using the SCAR, I would suggest taking them more long range. But if you're using the ACR, you know, it's decent at close range. It just doesn't have the best spraying capabilities. So if you're going to be using the ACR and you're going to be rushing, I would highly suggest you put on steady aim instead of stalker, because you are rushing around and people will beat you in gunfights if they have a submachine gun. Always, I would suggest using a machine pistol as your secondary, unless you're using a shotgun, which I would use like that 44 Magnum. So with all the assault rifles, basically same setup. They're all pretty much exactly the same, except the ACR is really overpowered and the M4 is not the greatest. So that pretty much wraps up my tutorial. And if you're using the M4 or if you're using the MK14, I would highly suggest you put on a akimbo weapons, obviously, as your secondary, because it's already long range enough, and it's not the best at close range combat. So that wraps up my tutorial. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it helps you out a lot. And in the next video I'll go over support, people running support for you, and also how to Moab hunt very well and get lots of Moabs. Even though I don't have the most Moabs, I have quite a few, like 50. So watch my next video. Thanks.